Hi everybody, and welcome back to Be Like Christ. This video is for people that have a good reputation in the church. Not everyone, but you'll know who you are by the end of the video. There are a lot of people in the church that have a great reputation, and think about your congregation. There are probably great elders or ministers or preachers, but even beyond that, probably great members in your congregation that have great reputations. For years and years and years, they've shown to be godly people of Christian character. There's also a lot of people in history that have a great reputation. Think of all the people throughout the generations that have in some way been a benefit to Christendom. You go back a little bit further to the generations right after the Gospels and the Apostles. There were the great martyrs who have a tremendous reputation for how they held to their faith even in the face of great danger. And then there's people that are actually mentioned in the biblical text. People like Paul, who poured out his life for others that they could have salvation. And the people that he mentions, Epaphroditus, Chloe in Romans chapter 16. There's Peter, and then James, the Lord's brother, who for a long time has a very strong reputation in secular history for supporting the church in Jerusalem. And then there's people who labored in cities like Ephesus, Aquila and Priscilla, and John the Apostle. And there's only one other person that I want to mention here who had a good reputation, at least for a time, and that was Judas. Judas, I thought he was, he was the guy in John chapter 13, the Last Supper, where Jesus is in the upper room with his apostles and they're eating Passover. Jesus mentions that there's one of the apostles sitting there that's going to betray him. And it's never mentioned that the apostles are like, it's going to be Judas. I knew it. In fact, the text says that none of them knew who it was. They were confused. And the reason for that was because Judas looked just like them. It wasn't as if when they went out to do miracles, Judas's miracles just didn't really work, and that they were always suspicious, like there's something wrong with this guy. Sometime in the future, he's going to mess up. There was none of that. And even when Judas gets up and leaves the upper room to go out and to talk with the chief priests, the apostles still don't get the message. For 3 years, Judas was one of the privileged few that got to walk around and spend seemingly 24 hours with Jesus. And we don't know how long Judas was crooked in his behavior, but many people must have looked at him and thought, wow, what it must be like to be an apostle of Christ. Judas is one of them. He really must be something. Judas had everyone fooled. And I want to ask you a question in way of application. Is that you? On the outside, does everything appear right? Maybe you even have a great reputation in your congregation or with the Christians in your area, but deep down, something is rotten. Seems like Judas even thought that he had Jesus fooled. You can think about when the apostles were walking around and Jesus was actually reading the minds of his enemies, his adversaries, the scribes, Pharisees, priests, and yet Judas had the audacity to steal money from the bag where the apostles kept all their cash. And seemingly, it was almost like he thought he was fooling Jesus. Is that what your life looks like today? You're fooling everyone around you, and maybe you even think that you're fooling Christ. One thing that I think is really, really interesting is that Jesus never calls Judas out. Jesus had so many opportunities to reveal Judas to the public for what he really was, and yet he never did. And I want to ask you again, is that you? You have some sin and you've been able to hide it from everyone. And not even God has exposed that sin to others in your life. It's totally hidden away. This is the application that you need for your life, because we don't want you to live like that, and God certainly doesn't want you to live like that. Watch this. Jesus gave Judas time and space to repent, to change his life, to become a different person. And Judas didn't take it. He absolutely refused it. And in the end, his sin destroyed him. Judas's hypocrisy caught up with him in the end, and it ended up that he exposed himself for being what he truly was. And so if you fit this picture, you have a great reputation, but you're keeping something hidden. There's something bad underneath the surface, and you have everyone fooled, and no one knows, and no one suspects you. And God has not even exposed that sin to the world. Perhaps the reason for that is not so that you can continue to live that kind of lifestyle, but perhaps it's God giving you space and time to repent, because in the end, nothing's going to be hidden from God. And come Judgment Day, everything's going to be exposed. And I have fit this picture in some ways in the past, and I'm thankful that God gave me time and space to repent. And so if this is you today, take the opportunity that God has given you, the one that Judas didn't take, and come back to God.